We've got the book review of Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, coming up. All right, so we got the book review for Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. It was published in 2007. It's about a little over 300 pages, and it's a great read. Tim has an unorthodox way of looking at things, and it's interesting. So I've already learned a lot from this book, and I've changed my habits and my approach to certain things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, he has an unorthodox way of looking at things. And there's one quote in here. There's one quote in here that sums it up very well. And if you have read the book, or if you've never read the book, this will be the one big takeaway that I think you'll either remember or that you'll take away from this book review, or if you ever do read the book. And it is, life is full of compromises, and it's necessary to let small bad things happen if you want to get huge good things done. So basically, it's saying prioritize your work to a certain extent. That's like sort of like prioritizing, but it's a step further. Because, for example, you can prioritize your work, but if you're prioritizing things that have little impact, like, for example, a small thing, if you prioritize small things too much, you won't have time for the big things. And so I always have had a hard time with this too, so I understand the challenge. But we'll talk about it a little more, but that is a good quote to sum up the fact that we need to start putting our time into things that will have the largest, most impactful outcome. And if you're putting too much time into those things that'll have tiny, tiny outcomes, then you have to think about it. Why? What if it's a tiny outcome and you're putting so much of your time into it? Why? You have to take a step back and just ask yourself why. Because, one, life is short. Two, life is short. I have a great second point there, but life is short, I guess. So that means two things. One, you only have so much time to work on the big stuff that'll have the biggest impact. Two, you only have so much time to enjoy it, whether that means you want to enjoy time with your family, or you just want to enjoy time with yourself and enjoy the world and have fun. There's only so much time to do that. And if you're focusing so much time on busy work that really wouldn't matter if it didn't get done, like he said, like Tim says here, it would be a small bad thing. Of course, it would be a bad thing that it doesn't get done, but it's a small bad thing. And you sacrifice the small bad thing, which this little small bad thing, to focus on the big thing, then you'll probably do better in life. You'll have better outcomes. You'll have more time to spend with family and loved ones, or traveling and having fun. Less inconsequential work. So that is a quote that sums us up. I'll be taking you through 4 steps that Tim has 4 sections. He calls it 4 steps to live like the new rich. That's what Tim calls these people, the new rich, who don't live like 9 to 5, don't live through the 9 to 5 minutia, and who just stay put in the same place, location-wise. They don't travel the world. He says that the new rich, they're not bound by any any local region. They can travel all over, work remotely all over, and they don't stick within the rules of this arbitrary 9 to 5. And that is the unorthodox way of looking at it. That's what Tim here in his 4 steps will describes how to get there. And a lot of it is very practical stuff. He's not just talking theoretical. It's theory with practical advice, which is the best type of books. If you have a book that's completely all conceptual and just in theory, that's great, but you got to give people the steps to now get there. And Tim does that. So kudos to Tim for doing that. So yeah, it's a different perspective of looking at things. There's 4 steps. First is, he says to get to this new lifestyle design. Also, he calls it a lifestyle design. To get to this new lifestyle design of the new rich, it goes first by the first section is, or the first step is D for definition. And it's a mnemonic, so it's deal. So it's the 4 sections is DEAL, deal. And then D stands for definition. That's the first step. 2 is elimination, E for elimination. A is for automation. That's the 3rd step. And 4th step is L for liberation. So those are 4 steps. Within the book, there's obviously got a beginning and an ending, but that's the meat of what Tim's talking about here. And so I'll go through a couple highlights of each step. So first step is D for definition. And a couple of things that I took away is you need to have a purpose on what you're doing. Don't just be shuffling papers. And so this is going back to what I was just mentioning earlier. Are you doing inconsequential work just to do it? This is a big thing also that Tim talks about. It's like, are you just doing things to fill the 9 to 5? Like, if you have a 9 to 5 day, is a third of that? Are you staying till 5 every day and maybe filling 2 hours of shuffling papers just to fill out the 8 hours each day? And if you are, that's a big waste of time. You are putting your time towards things that are inconsequential, small things. Or it just might be busy work to stay busy. Might even really have no consequence. It just might be shuffling papers. And so I talk about this a lot when I talk about goal setting. You need to have a purpose. What is your overarching purpose? And make that your North Star. What is your North Star? And focus on accomplishing that, focusing on getting closer to your North Star. Otherwise, you may just put too much time focusing on shuffling papers and busy work and things that aren't important at all. And if you do that, that's wasting time. And your time is very, very valuable because it's very limited on this earth. So focus your time on important things that will have and get you closer to your main purpose in life. 2 is also the defining fear. So fear, Tim talks about in this book, usually is overhyped. So, after you define fear and you think about it a little more and you isolate the thoughts in your head, usually they're unfounded. But I think we're all guilty of this. So sometimes I have a tendency to think, wow, if I do this, if you lose your job, This is where unfounded and you can overhype it out. But if you lose your job, then you'll have no income. Then you won't be able to pay for the mortgage. You got to sell the house. Then you will have no place to live, and your family will have to be on the streets, and you'll be eating garbage from the street. I don't know if that's everyone's fear, but that is a unfounded fear, for example, that Tim talks about, like that in reality, if you were to do something like that where you lost your job or something similar, most likely that wouldn't be the case, and most likely you'd be able to find something else where you can support your family. Probably a bunch of expenses you can cut. There's probably another job you can get. And so there's a couple of thoughts I have here is define your fear. I love to write. So I think when I write, I externalize my thoughts. And when you have, for example, when you have a lot of anxiety, it's usually like 5 or 6 thoughts jumbled together, balled up in your head that you can't isolate. And since you can't pick each one out, you can't rationalize it. You just have like 6 thoughts in your head. They're all giving you anxiety. You can't like take one out and say, okay, let me look at this and see in reality, like, should this really be causing me any anxiety? Oh, probably not, because I can just do X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's one out. Now I have 5 instead of 6 thoughts, and I just keep taking one by one by one by one. You write it down, and now it's all on paper. You externalize your thoughts, and now you can see what's giving you anxiety. And that's one approach to doing it. Really, what I'm trying to say is when you define fear, and what Tim talks about here is externalize those thoughts, either by writing it down or by talking to someone or talking out loud. When you externalize each of those thoughts and you really look at them under a microscope and you know that you do have many options, your fears sometimes they get a little out of control and they're overhyped. And so define them so they don't get overhyped, so you can minimize them. And when you have less fear, you're more likely to go after those things that were holding you back. I talk about this a lot. Don't let fear hold you back. If fear is holding you back, you're not going to be able to go after you're going to be timid and shy, and you won't take that first step. So don't let fear hold you back. Take that first step. So that is defining. There's more to all these sections, by the way. I'm highlighting a couple of areas that I found really encapsulated the section, but I'm sure there's more. So that is definition. 2 is elimination. So within elimination, this is the one area that I love most from this book, and it wasn't completely transformational as far as a way to think. I knew about this whole thing, I just didn't apply it to my day-to-day tasks. And so within elimination, Tim talks about the Pareto rule, and the Pareto rule is an 80-20 rule, and that means that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. It's basically just a concept that says a small percentage of inputs lead to a larger percent of your outputs. And usually within business, it's a small percentage of my customers usually equate to a large percent of my revenue. So if you were thinking that right in business, you would want to focus a lot of time on talking and reselling and upselling to those 20% who are the most valuable because they spend the most and drive the most revenue for you. And vice versa. If that means 20% of your customers make up 80% of your revenue, then 80% of your customers make up 20% of your revenue. And this is averages here. It doesn't have to be perfectly 80-20. It could be 90-10. It could be 95-5. It could be 99-1. But the point is that a small percent usually make up a large percent of the outcomes. And this doesn't just have to be business. When it comes to like customers, when it comes to customers and a business, it can mean anything. It usually 80-20 rule is usually evident in a lot of places, or it usually exists, I should say, in a lot of places. I mean, I'm just to make it up. Maybe I would assume a large percent of the population, the pollution comes from a small percentage of people, probably big industrialized countries or something. So probably a small percentage of pollution comes from, a big percentage of pollution probably comes from a smaller percentage of industrialized countries or a population, which is probably true because the United States has a crap ton of, polluting probably. That's just one example. I'm just saying in every aspect, you could probably find that this 80-20 rule exists. And so because of that, Tim applies this to work that you're doing. So it also applies 80% of the outcomes that you do at your work or at a company or even in your personal life comes from 20% of the inputs that you have. So think about that. So that means that there's work that you're doing that has an 80% impact on what you're doing. And then there's work that you're doing that has only a 20% impact. And you need to make sure how much time you're putting into those different types of tasks. And so think about what you do on a daily basis, the inputs and the outputs, and think about the 80-20 rule. So for me, I thought about this, and now I do my to-do lists, and I break them out into 80-20 different sections. So I take all my to-dos that I need for what I'm going to be doing that day, and normally I would just go one by one. I prioritize it based on when something's due and my thoughts on the importance of it. But now I break it out into 80-20. So I say, okay, what are the things that will have an 80% impact on the outcome? So I keep saying outcomes, but it could mean because I'm just thinking of like input and output. So input and what's the outcome? So what is going to have an 80% output or 80% impact on the work that I do? And I prioritize those tasks first. Those are the things that I take care of first within a day. If I can't take care of those things first, I don't even worry about the stuff that I now categorize as 20%, things that are small things, right? Small things that if I don't get done, I will let small bad things happen so I can get to this 80% stuff. So 80-20, and you got to think about it. Take a step back and think about what you do day to day. And think about the 80-20 rule. And I keep saying input and output. You have to really think about the input, because if you're spending 80% of your time focused on something that'll have a 20 or small percent impact, that is a lot of time wasted. And you either have to do a combination of one or two things, or you can do both. But one is put that 80% of the time that you're focusing on small things, inconsequential things, busy work, shuffling papers. Focus that time on either the big things so you can get the big things done, and or just don't do them, and more time with your family, more travel, have fun, enjoy life. So I'm I'm a big fan of working your ass off, waking up early to get more things done than other people, setting goals, working hard, all that stuff. And all of that is still valid here. And I keep saying, well, you want to spend more time with your family, you want to go travel. And initially you think, well, that's not working hard. It seems like you're enjoying too much of life, and you don't want to just enjoy life, because then you will neglect the work that it takes to get to be in a position where you would say that you are successful. So I get that, but if you're putting 80% of your time towards a very tiny inconsequential work, then you're just doing busy work for the sake of busy work. And then if you put that now time back into bigger things that'll have a bigger impact, and maybe some of that time now to just taking a step back and being with the family a little more often, and maybe a vacation, or you travel, it won't be that bad. You can still do two things. You can still work your ass off, and you can still enjoy life. It's just a matter of, are you working your ass off on things that don't matter? Are you putting 80% of your time into shuffling papers? If you are, you're sort of just working to work. You're not doing anything. You're not accomplishing anything. I talk about this a lot when I talk about writing resumes. You have to write your resume as what you've accomplished, not your job responsibilities. No one cares about your job responsibilities. Some people probably do. You have to qualify the person, what they do in a day-to-day. But really, we're looking at, what have you accomplished? I don't care that you shuffled papers. So, if you're putting 80% of your time to shuffling papers, and it's not having an outcome on your life, or your company, or the company that you own, or the company that you work for, then think about reprioritizing your time, because you're wasting time and you're not accomplishing anything. And a lot of that time could be reallocated to other things that will actually have a bigger impact. And a lot of those things could be, we'll talk about automation next, but, delegated or eliminated. And you don't have to worry about those things anymore, because after reading this book, you should let small bad things happen, because you want to focus on the big good things, not the small things. So that is elimination for the 80-20 rule. That's the biggest. The 80-20 rule is the biggest thing that I took away. Go through this with a fine-tooth comb. Figure out what the hell you're doing every day, and say, do I need to be doing this? Because what is this leading to? I do this every day, and it takes me 3 hours, and here's the outcome of it. And what is this outcome? Like, think about it. Are you doing a report that nobody looks at, and it takes you 3 hours a day to pull this report and put it together, and literally nobody looks at it? Seems like you just wasted 3 hours of your day, and you haven't done shit. Okay, so think about what you're doing. Take a step back. Think about the 80-20 rule. And if you're putting 20% of your time towards really impactful things and 80% of your time to unimpactful things, try to shift that a little bit. Put more time towards bigger things, less time towards small things. And then also, once you have the list of bigger things that you want to go after, and this comes from the book. This is the second bullet point within elimination. So within elimination, right? Elimination was the second step. Then I talked the 80-20 rule. Also within the 80-20 rule, there's one other point I want to make, and it's called set short and clear deadlines. Don't let things linger. So I'm a big fan of setting deadlines. I talk about this a lot when you're goal setting. I think if you don't have a deadline, you won't feel the urgency to work faster and harder towards getting that thing done. When you have a looming deadline, in your subconscious is think about how do I get this thing done for the deadline. Without it, you're just like lingering. You're like, if I don't get it done, who cares? There's no time it needs to be done. I'll get to it tomorrow, next week. I'll get to it next. I'll get to it next year. So I'm a big fan of deadlines. And what Tim says here is that you set short and clear deadlines with yourself and when you delegate too. So you when you're focusing on those big things, set and you have one task to do, set a short period. Let's say an hour. I need to review the business analytics of X company. I don't know. Let's set an hour. I want to set an hour on my calendar with non-disruption, and I just want to bang it out within an hour. And you set that time period, and you will work harder to get that done. Without it, you might let it linger. And so I do this to my emails now. I say, okay, I have an hour to catch up on my emails. I'm going to just set this time aside, and I will catch up within this hour period, as opposed to letting it linger. I just read this email. Okay, done. I'll go work on something else, and then I'll read a few more emails. You're scattered. So focus on the big things, then compartmentalize them into short periods of working on them. Don't multitask is, I guess, what I hear him saying. When you try to multitask, you're working on too many damn things, and you waste a lot of time switching from back and forth. So I used to do this. I'm guilty of this, like reading an email and then go do a task and then go back to read another email, then go do another task. Now I say, nope, I will read my email within this hour. Once I'm done reading my email, I will work on this next thing. And then I will stick within this thing until I'm done. And then I'll work on the next thing. And I'll try to separate it out into clear segments that have short deadlines. Otherwise, you're multitasking and you're letting things linger, and it won't be efficient. Yeah, people who say they multitask well are liars, or they don't know what they're talking about. You waste so much time just transferring from one mindset of work to another. I forget the metric, but Tim talks about it in his book. There's a certain amount of time that you need to get into the amount of time wasted on transferring work. So if you're working on task 1 and then you go to task 2, it's like, I don't know, I forget the number, but there's a certain number that's like, it takes enough time. It takes time to now get into the mindset of task 2 and figure out what you want to do with task 2. Then, okay, I figure out what I want to do, and then you start working on it. It's like, it's a ramp up period, and it takes a little time. So if you keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it's like ramp up, ramp down, ramp up, ramp down. A lot of time just wasting on ramping up. Ramp up on one task, get it done, get it off your checklist, do the next one. You'll be way more efficient. You'll have clear deadlines. You'll work towards them. Okay, so that is elimination. Use the 80-20 rule and set clear and short deadlines for the work that you're doing. The third step is automation. So the 4 steps, remember, 4 steps. 1 is for definition. 2 we just talked about for elimination. 3 is now automation. The 4 steps to get to the new rich that Tim Ferriss talks about. So automation. I'm pulling one key takeaway here from automation is just because you can do it cheaper doesn't mean you should do it. And this is basically like you need to either figure out, can you delegate to somebody else, or get technology to help automate it for you. But this is eliminating things that somebody else can do and eliminating the smaller things. So I see a lot of, even me, I think I've had trouble with this a little bit, delegating work to somebody, and or fear of delegating work to someone knowing that it won't either have the same quality or, in this case, it'd be cost a little more. And so there's two things there, right? One is quality, the other is cost. For the quality thing, you should delegate your work and try to automate your work that, one, won't have the biggest impact on what you're doing. So still thinking within the 80-20 rule. And two, that somebody else can do with similar levels of quality. So, if you're focused on you're focused on the 80-20, so you're focused on big stuff, all of your time towards big things, and you're delegating the smaller things that can't be eliminated, but the smaller things. But the quality will only be 90% of what you would normally do. So if you're looking at percentages, if you want 100% on point, it's when you delegate, it's like 90 or 80%. But if you think about it, if I'm using some circles as examples of like trying to think about scale and impact. So think about the big stuff you're working on, and then you delegate some of the smaller things. In the grand scheme of things, something being 90% on quality is fine. Because you have to think about how much time would you have had to put towards getting that thing done if you didn't delegate it. And let's say it took 2 or 3 hours a day or something. Now you can't focus on the thing that'll actually be a bigger thing. So you just got to think a little bit mathematically on that. Are you putting too much time towards something that to make it perfect when someone else or something else, some other system can do it relatively similar, 90 to 80% quality? So you can focus on things that will actually have a bigger impact on what you do. And in the grand scheme of things, those smaller tasks that you're delegating, will the 90 or 80% of quality really matter so much, as long as it's not putting anyone's life in danger, right? If, let's say it's a report, if we're talking about, building a car that you need to have 100% on quality because people's lives are on the line, that's a different story. I'm saying like a report that you have to do, or communication, like customer service, all that stuff. Just because when you delegate it won't be 100% quality, doesn't mean that you shouldn't delegate it. That's something that I see a lot of people have trouble doing, is letting go of the work because they want to do all these things, right? Because they feel like they want to control the quality. But guess what? If you focus on too many things, you can never do them good. You can do a lot of things average, or a small amount of things really well, and you have to think about it like that. Then the next thing is, well, then the other side of that is, even if you can do it cheaper, does that mean you should do it? An example is like, could I, in theory, I'll just give like an example of my house. Could I, in theory, do it? I could probably do it cheaper to do my own roof and fix my own house and do all that stuff. But if I do that, how much time will I have to take away? How much time will I have to take away to do that versus paying somebody else? And a lot of this comes down to, how much are you worth an hour? So, you can figure out how much you're worth an hour if you work at a company, right? If you're paid salary or if you're paid by the hour, you could pretty much figure out how much you're worth an hour. And then so that is your worth per hour. So if you can figure out your worth per hour, in theory, you shouldn't take on any work that someone else can do that somebody else can do for a lower amount. And what I'm trying to say is, if you're worth, let's say, $50 an hour, if you're worth $50 an hour, and there's a job that you need to hire someone for like $15 an hour, but you could do it yourself and not have to pay that person. So you can essentially do it almost for free, or you can pay someone to $15 an hour. In theory, you should not do that. You just because that you can do it cheaper for free versus have to pay someone $15 an hour. In theory, you should not do that job because it's less than how much you're actually paid. Okay, so if you focus your time on other things, on other income generating work, you would be worth $50 an hour. So you would not want to put all of your time, which is very valuable, towards something that is only $15 when you're worth 50. So that's another part of the delegating, is just because you can do it cheaper than what someone is asking doesn't mean that you should do it. It depends on how much your time is worth. And so we have 24 hours in a day. If this $15 an hour and you're worth $50 an hour and you put half of your time into that, then you just took half of your time away from more valuable work to less valuable work. And at first it's hard to think through. It's like, okay, I can just go do this myself. Why do I have to pay this person $15 an hour? I can do it myself for free. And when you think about it like that, it makes sense. Like, well, why should I pay this person? But then you have to think about time as it's an absolute number and it's finite. So if you spent 20 hours a week doing something that is $15 an hour worth $15 an hour, then you just lost 20 hours on spending time on that's worth $50 an hour or more. So don't always think that just because you can do something cheaper doesn't mean that you should do it. Think about what you're worth per hour, and then look at what someone else is, what other system, or if you're delegating or outsourcing, what that would cost you. And if it's cheaper than what you're worth, then you shouldn't do it. Okay, so that's that. Next piece is the eliminate before you delegate. So in this whole conversation of automation is, think about it. Automation, delegating to someone else who can do it, or some kind of computer technology or some kind of technology, a machine, whatever, that can automate it for you. But there's one step before that. Before you do that delegation, you have to think about, is this even worth it? Am I just delegating work to get work done? Like 80-20 makes sense, right? But sorry. 80-20 makes sense, but is there okay, my voice fine? Okay. The 80-20 rule makes sense. It's fine. I get it. Like 80% impact, 20%. But is there something that's like almost 1% impact? Is there something that you should just eliminate completely? And there probably is a ton. If you didn't do it, if you didn't do that thing, you would let a little small bad thing happen. Let it happen. What's going to happen? It's a small bad thing. Who cares? You have to put your time towards more valuable things. So automation. Don't do things just because you can make them cheaper, and don't be afraid to delegate them either. If the quality is not going to be 100% perfect, because you have more time to focus on higher valuable things. Okay. 2 is, before you even delegate those things, think about what you can eliminate, because the people that you're delegating to also have time and they're valuable too. So I don't know what they're worth an hour, but what are they doing? That's you have to think about, just like you and just like how you're prioritizing your time with the 80-20, they probably have to do the same thing. So if you're giving them work that really doesn't matter if it gets done or not, it's just busy work, then you're wasting their time, and if you're paying them, you're wasting your money on paying them to do things that don't matter. Pay people to do things that matter. So you wouldn't want to do that, right? You would want to give them things that matter. So eliminate before you delegate. Okay, so then that was step 3. Step 4 is L for liberation. So we had D, definition, 2 is elimination, 3 is automation, 4 is L for liberation. And this section really talks about, the section is like, if you did all the things that Tim talks about in his book, then you're liberated. You work less hours, you have more time to do whatever the hell you want, and you feel liberated. And what Tim talks about here is that it feels good for like the first few weeks, and then reality hits in. It's like, whoa, can I do this my whole life? Like it feels strange when you come from a 9-to-5 life or somewhere where you're working a lot, and then you go put all of his principles into place. And I highly encourage you to read the whole book, because I'm highlighting some principles, but there's a lot more. And you go to a lifestyle that's very different from working all day to very, very different lifestyle. The new rich that Tim talks about. So, and there's, so like an example is, when you're with this 9-to-5 lifestyle, it's like social too. It's like you have something, you're not just going to work, you're also socializing. It's a place to socialize, and you feel like you have a meaning and a purpose with a company. And so if you were to completely stop doing the 9-to-5, right? Like think about if you were to on a Wednesday ask your friend to go out and get lunch or something, they'd most likely say, well, I'm working, I can't do that. So you have to, it's different. If you were to apply all this stuff that Tim talks about, and you travel in the world, and you don't really matter it doesn't matter where you live. Tim lives in different parts of the world, depending on the time, depending on the time of the year, all the time. And so you have to find somehow to fill the void, I guess is what I'm saying. And there's two ways that, well, there's one way that Tim uses to fill the void of the replacing that 9-to-5 life and social life and time, is by learning. He likes to learn. 2 things he loves to do is when he's in a new country, he loves to learn something physical and learn something like a language. So if he goes to Portugal, he likes to learn the language there, but he also likes to do something physical, like, what is there, like some kind of karate or some kind of combat sport he likes to do. So that's how he fills the void and keeps his mind busy and continues to learn. He does value learning a ton, just like I do. So once you're liberated and you have all this free time and all of your friends are still working, and you have to try to fill this void of what you do, if you can ever get there, of working a 4-hour work week, we'll see. Then big thing is keep learning and figure out what you like to do, what learning you like to do. What Tim likes to do is the combat stuff. He likes to learn new combat sports, and he likes to learn new languages. But you can do whatever the hell you want, because it's your life. And last thing that I'll leave you with here is that there's a poem that Tim adds at the end of this book, and that I think also helps encapsulate what this book is all about. The first quote, I think, completely encapsulates it. Let small bad things happen so you can get big things done. The second quote here. It's an extract from a poem, but I'll read the end of it, and it's impactful. It's, life is not a race. Take it slower. Hear the music before the song is over. And so it's basically just trying to say, life is short. Enjoy it while you are there, and don't focus your entire life just doing work, especially if it's just busy work. Have a purpose. Prioritize the things that make the biggest difference. Continue learning and enjoy the moment while you're in it. And that is essentially what this book is all about. Focus on big things. The small things are a waste of your time. Try to automate or delegate the small things that will still have a difference. Enjoy life, enjoy the moment, and liberate yourself. So for me, I've already applied the 80-20 rules with my to-do list. Every day now at 6 p.m., almost every day around 6 p.m., I write my to-do list for the next day, and I break it out into 80-20 like I mentioned, and I focus on the 80% part that'll have the biggest impact. 2, I'm learning better to step away from work, meaning if I've done all the big impactful things, then I feel better about letting the small bad things happen, because I get more time to focus on the big things, and I get more time to spend time with my family. So because of this book, I started to get a different perspective and say, okay, it's fine if I let these small, inconsequential things don't happen. It's fine that I don't have to work another 3 hours on a Friday night until 9 or 10 p.m. just to get some small things done that really no one even cares about, so I can spend time doing better things. And 3, I didn't talk about this specifically within the book, but Tim talks about not overloading yourself with meetings that don't matter. A lot of people try to throw, meetings on your calendar that are just wasteful time. And so now I also make sure that all my meetings have clear agendas. They're no longer than 30 minutes. And we have a specific purpose that we're talking about within that meeting. If it's just a meeting with no agenda and everyone's just socializing, or they're just talking and nothing's getting done, then it's a waste of my time. If you have half of your day filled with meetings that waste your time, that's another thing that you're putting a lot of time towards something that has no major benefit. And so this has been a book that has changed my habits and things that I do. Changed my task list, how I think about breaking out my tasks. I've changed the way I think about letting go of some types of work, and how I think about how I do meetings and making them more efficient, more focused. And so for me, this unconventional book was great. It gave me a different perspective on things that I didn't have. And I highly recommend it to anyone, a young professional, someone in college, someone in high school, someone who's been working for 20, 30 years. This is a great book for anyone. Highly recommend it. It's a great read. And I'll end it off there. So go get your copy. I make no money on these recommendations. I just recommend books and topics, and I recommend things that I think will have a benefit for people, and that's why I recommend them. Tim's making money from it. I'm not. So I highly recommend you go get a copy, read it. It's an interesting read, and I hope you enjoyed this book review. There are more to come, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.